Hey, welcome back to the channel. We're diving into a good one today, which is how do you pay yourself as a small business owner? If you run a business, if you're doing any kind of money running a business, whether that's a side hustle, or ideally, if you're doing even more than that, you're going to want to listen to this and we're going to dive into it. Okay. So you're a small business owner and maybe you're like me when you started out. When I started out, I certainly didn't have a system of how to pay myself. And I want to break this down, and I should caveat this. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. This is just what has worked for me. So of course, please take this with a grain of salt that I'm not a financial advisor. I just happen to run a small business, have been able to pay myself successfully for years on end, and want to walk you through the basic ways that you can start feeling secure about paying yourself every single month. Cool. So the basic things we need to start with is we got to ask ourselves the question, one, are we even making money? Right. And so the first thing is we need to have a simple system for tracking whether or not we're actually making money in the business or not. Now, there are incredible softwares out there like QuickBooks. You can even use, we've used softwares like Xero. To be honest, when you're starting out in your business, you don't need a ton of those tools. In fact, outside of maybe QuickBooks down the road, you don't really need anything other than like a Google Sheet or Excel sheet. And I want to break down the simple system I use for one of my businesses, which does probably around $80,000 a year. It's a side business I do for just side consulting. And I figure out, how do I pay myself from that? So the first thing is, what I do is I keep 3 Excel spreadsheets. So they're all in one spreadsheet, but they're 3 separate sheets within the spreadsheet. If that's confusing, you just create 3 separate Excel spreadsheets. Cool. So let's dive into this. What's in the first spreadsheet? So the first spreadsheet is my line item of expenses. So every expense that I use through my business, I put into this line item expense. Now, a couple of things. If you're just starting out, this might come from your personal, you might be spending out of your personal business account. Caveat number one, recommendation number one is, if you have a business and you want this to be a real business, go open up a business checking account. A different video will talk about which types of banks and where you should get that from. At this stage, if you're starting out, you really just want to go open up a business checking account. The reason is, it makes it so much easier when all of your expenses and income come in through one checking account. I can't tell you, when I first did this, I was still getting all of my, when I would send invoices, I would all come through my personal checking account. When I would send, or when I would receive, or I would spend expenses, it would all come out through my personal checking. I would have to go at the end of every month. And when I was terrible at this, at the end of the year tax season, and go through all my personal and business expenses all through the same personal checking account. And it was a headache. Like, I spent so much time like, is this personal or is this business? Is personal, is this business? It was a nightmare. And so much to the point I was like, I'm never doing this again. I have to open up a business checking account. So step number one, open up a business checking account. Totally worth your time. Yeah, you might have to call the bank, go to the bank. A lot of them allow you to do it online now, but totally worth it. Cool. So what I do is, at the end of every month, I go and I line item every expense. And luckily, it's all through one business checking account. If you want to get really nitty gritty, you open up 2 business checking accounts, and one of them is just your expense account. So all of your expenses come out of that account. It's probably a step too far at this stage. So as long as it's coming from one account, I go under all my transactions and I go to withdrawals. And I line item. So for me, I use really 2 things. I use Stripe and I use PayPal. So I log into Stripe and I log into PayPal and I go through all my expenses. And I literally type out every expense on this Excel sheet in column 1. I name it, what is this, right? What is the expense that's coming out? 2 is I label, then I have all the months laid out. So name, and then January, February, March, April, May, June, July, up to December. And then I put in how much I spent for that expense each month. And on this spreadsheet at the end, at the bottom of each month, I have a total. And that gives me a total amount of the expenses that I've paid out of the business every single month. That's sheet number 1. It tells me expenses, all the money that's coming out of the business. Sheet number 2 is all the revenue coming into the business. So what do? Well, I actually go and same thing. I pull up PayPal and Stripe. Those are the 2 places that I receive money from. And I go in and I look at deposits. Hey, what are all the deposits that have come in? And I line item all of them. Who did I get money from? What business did I get money from? And I mark down, same thing. So line item the name of where the source of revenue came from. And then January through December, I label out and I just mark down, X amount came in, X amount came in for this person, this person, this person. At the bottom, of course, I have total. So for January, I have a total revenue, February, total revenue, and so on. So my first two sheets, first sheet number one is a business expenses sheet. So all my expenses. Sheet number two is my revenue, how much revenue came in. And then the third sheet is what I call a profit loss statement. Now, there are more fancy ways to do this. For me, it's just a basic way that I can do this. It also tells me how much do I want to save for taxes and business growth. So on this third sheet, I have each month, I have on the left side, the first column says revenue, then expenses, and then under that I have profit. So let's just go through this. For example, the top line revenue, I go to sheet 2, pull my revenue from that month, put it in. Then I go to sheet 1, grab the expenses for that month, put it in. I then take the difference, so revenue, subtract expenses to come up with my gross profit. That is my gross profit. That is actually the money that I have earned after expenses in my business. And there are nuances to this. We won't go into the depth of gross profit versus net profit, but for the sake of this, when you're starting out, it's a really good place to start. So then I have my net profit, and that tells me how much I have in the business that actually is mine for now, right? Gross profit. But we haven't accounted for taxes and we haven't accounted for savings in the business. Now, if you're early starting out, saving in the business might be tough. I still highly recommend that you keep X% into a growth fund for your business. However, if you absolutely can't, then, don't worry about it. We'll get to it eventually. But here are the things that we look at is a couple of things. One, again, not financial advice, but you want to think about, I need to save something conservatively for taxes, right? So I think in terms of conservative of like, how do I make sure that at the end of the year, I don't have a tax bill that I'm like, what, I owe that much? I'd like to know ahead of time that I'm saving for it as I go. So out of that, out of the top line revenue, I take 20%. So I take that top number revenue, 20% times 0.2. And that's how much ideally I should be saving for taxes. And that's a conservative amount because ultimately we're going to pay tax on profit. But in this case, it just gives me a really good cushion of knowing, cool, this is how much I'm probably, if I save this much in taxes for my personal business, my state where I'm at, 20% will be good enough. Obviously for you, you want to check what would be a reasonable amount for you in your state and your business. And then I also do the same thing. I take 20% again for savings. So whatever that I take that out of the profit. So out of the profit I know I can keep, I take 20% of that and I move it towards business savings. And then after that, I'm able to pay myself. So I pay myself the rest that's left over after I've saved for the business and I've saved for taxes. Then I pay myself out of whatever is left. And that's my simple way for a business that's doing, 6 figures, a little under 6 figures, to be able to pay myself consistently and feel really good about it. And I can gladly say I've yet to have a tax bill that has been like, wow, I owe that much. I've almost always over prepared for that in this case. So I hope that helps. By the way, I have this all out in my own spreadsheet that I'm happy to send to you. It has the 3 separate sheets. If you feel like you're struggling with your business finances and need a place to start, just comment spreadsheet below on this YouTube video, and I'll make sure to send you over my copy of my simple business tracking system. And all you have to do is go to File, make a copy, and you can have it for yourself. Cool. Hope this helps. As always, if you've enjoyed this, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Would love to have you continue joining the channel, help you grow your business, improve who you are, and continue to grow together. We'll catch you on the next episode.